baby. Welcome into another edition of the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. Jimmie Allen, Alex Drake, Casey Matthews, joined by Stephen Ashworth today. The Jays on a 2-game win streak. They've won 4 of the last 5. Stephen, you kind of got into the bag a little bit last night. We were really impressed with some of the weapons you added to your arsenal last night. That was the mid-range floater. You got a couple of elbow range jump shots as well. How did you feel the offense flowed last night? What allowed you to kind of get a little bit more creative with your shot?
Yeah, the offense was clicking for sure. There's a few lulls there at, kind of around the 5-minute mark in the first half and then around the same time in the second half. But outside of those, kind of 2 spots there, we were able to get really high quality looks and high quality shots. And I think that, especially in the pick and roll, Ryan was doing a really good job of really knocking out my defender, setting physical screens, allowing me to get space, which then put pressure on their big to make the decision on, is he going to step up and contest the mid-range pull-up or even the three-point jump shot, as well as then the floaters. And so I think that after I saw a few of those go in and was just able to make plays, I just had confidence to be able to kind of get to some of the other skill set and, a little bit deeper in the bag.
This is probably the second or third time I've recognized this. Obviously, Stephen, Jimmie and I were down on the court last night before the game. You said hello to us, and that doesn't impact your play. But
because we're a big deal.
For the third time that I've noticed this, Isaac Trout has a huge game when you say hello to us. Can we get a phone call on Saturday?
Yeah. I'll give you guys a quick little text, say, hey, you guys ready? And I'll just say, hey, guys, and then I'll hang up.
But in all actuality, that last 3 diving into the corner for Isaac, can you talk about just how tough of a shot that is?
Yeah, I mean, that was ridiculous. I even posted on my social media just like absurd behavior by Isaac Trout right here. Because a shot like that from someone who's 6'10", as big as he is, off of the move, going from right to left, having to get his feet set in the corner, the pass coming from the baseline, like all of those things with the guy then on your hip, like it was an incredible shot. And, deservedly, he should have taken it because he was 3 for 3 and hadn't even hit the rim. And that was another one that didn't even hit the rim. And so, that shot is beyond difficult.
We were up in the booth, and Alex looks at me and goes, that was a heat check if I've ever seen one. And to your point, I mean, listen, he earned it up until that point.
Yeah, he definitely did.
He wanted it. You could see on the film, you could see him. He was getting his feet set as you know what I'm saying? You, as a shooter, like you're timing up your steps. He knew he knew that ball was coming to him too, and he knew exactly what he was going to do with it when he got it. So it's always fun to see guys get on little runs like that. But Steven, it's been a bit, man. It's good to have you back on the show. I'll tell you what I'm impressed with lately, and I actually just had lunch with the big fella, and we were talking about it, is you guys are so in sync right now, more so than I think I said it last night. Like it's probably been Marcus and Christian a couple of years ago since I've seen our point guard and center as in sync as you guys are right now, to where like I don't even think you're even focused on where you're delivering the ball to him anymore. And you're really just at a point where you're reading the defender. And if the defender helps on you, you're throwing it up and you don't care where it goes. You're just trusting him that he's going to go get it. So talk about that a little bit of like, how you get to that point. And then also on the flip side of that, just calling it what it is. I think Jemiah has some areas to improve in that regard. And do you think is that something you can teach another guy, or can he learn that, or is it just has to be reps and feel it out? Because if he could get to that point, because he can go off the screen too, this adds another element.
Yeah, a lot of it is reps, and a lot of it's just recognition within the offense and within the reads. And in a lot of ways, Jemiah, when he starts to feel that a little bit more even, and you can see it in practice, it's starting to click for him a little bit sooner. And he's starting to pick up those reads on the flip ups and when to go get his and when to flip it up to Calk, because he can also elevate above the rim, which gives him another advantage as to why a big might step up. For me personally, it's the big is going to step up because of my jump shooting ability, not because I'm going to go dunk it at the rim. And so that just kind of took time. And I think also, for Kalk and I both, it took a little time for him to realize the timing of where I'm going to get to my spot versus where some of the other guards he's played with were getting to their spots, right? My spot's much more around the elbow jumper. Their spots were down at the rim. And so he could time that up to where the big is going to commit to the rim and then he was ready for the flip up. But now I think people are seeing that, we're getting a lot more, behind the arc alley oops and even alley oops at the free throw line, to where I just know that my guy's still chasing me, the big stepping up, so I know that the rim is open and Kalk's going to be there. And so, like you said, it's a lot of the passes I'm not even really worried about where they're at around the rim, just getting it somewhere close, and I know that he's going to go up and finish because he's probably the best finishing big man on an alley oop that I've ever seen, like ever. It's incredible, just his ability to understand where he's at on the floor. Like even the half court lob the other night, I wasn't even really trying to throw it as a lob. I was just trying to lead him up there. But he just knows where he's at on the court, and he was able to catch it looking backwards and then turn around and know that he's right by the rim and dunk it, as opposed to take maybe one or two steps. And so it's an impressive ability that he has, and it's super fun to play with. And I feel like that sync is just getting better and better.
I'm not going to humble brag about who I've had lunch with or who I talked to before basketball
that's
games.
That's not what I was doing. That's not what I was doing.
You brought up.
It was subtle, but I liked it.
We got to talk to Murph last night, Casey.
Hey, he brought us pizza too. Hey, you brought up dunking a minute ago, and obviously last night Mason Miller had a coming out game and kind of feels like he's finally finding his shot, but. His dunk at the rim left a lot to be desired. What was the reaction on the bench like when he came over after he got that break and jumped a little bit late, but found the way to get the ball through the cylinder?
Yeah, I mean, as long as it goes in, it's 2 points, and we were giving him a little bit of a hard time of how it looked. But at the end of the day, the results is what matter, and he was able to finish it. And I think that for him, it was a great game to just see the ball go through the net, and he made timely buckets for us. You think similar back to the Kansas game of how big of an impact his 3-pointers were in that game and how it allows us to extend leads. And I think that he had a lot of those timely buckets again for us last night where it was either 7, 10, right around that edge to where if he makes it, we go up to 13 and kind of push that lead a little bit further. And those are the type of shots that if you can hit it, you can really kind of put your foot on the gas to finish the game, and we were able to do that, thanks to Mason last night.
So we've now touched on Isaac and Mason both. They led the way on the bench that had one of the highest scoring outfits that the bench has had in a while with 29 points last night. Is a game like, do you guys as the starters and you and Kalk specifically as kind of the returning leaders, do you guys go to Isaac and Mason after a game like that and say, we need you to stack that, we need more of this, and just kind of rebuild their confidence a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways it's spoken and unspoken, just the type of confidence that you try to reinstill back into those guys that have big time performances. Whether it's a text message or whether it's seeing them the next day and just reminiscing a little bit on what last night was, because everybody on that bench has a role for this team and is just got to be ready for when their number's called, because it's going to come in different circumstances and different situations, especially with all the different matchups the Big East has. And so a lot of it is just, I think that this team and the coaching staff does a good job of every single day reminding each other that we have to be ready for our moment, stay ready, and good things will come, and those guys were definitely ready last night. And it's not to say that other nights they're not ready, but at the same time, sometimes the opportunity doesn't come their way, whether they're not getting open looks because of what the defense is doing, or because maybe I missed them on an open look, things like that, to where they don't get the shot off. And so those things just come kind of naturally, and you just try to always stay confident in everybody out there.
Steve, you talked about getting open looks, turning the page to UConn. UConn's number 1 in the conference in 3-point attempts per field goal attempt defensively. So they only allow you to get roughly 30% of your shots off as threes, with so much of our identity being shooting from the perimeter. how do you think that plays out? What are some areas that you look for offensively for us to be able to, I can't say take advantage of that because I think that's a real asset to their defense. But how do you think we'll do in terms of getting the threes that we want, but also, I guess as a shooter, not forcing them when you do get an open look?
Yeah, definitely when you're playing teams like that, a lot of it comes down to, are they a defense that their ball screen coverage dictates that, their help coverage dictates that, or are they just running you off the line with crazy closeouts? Because, that type of number defending the three-point line can come in a variety of ways. And so, we're very process oriented, and so I haven't even had too much time to watch the film exactly on UConn on what they're trying to do when it comes to that. But I think a big key is going to be, figuring out their pick and roll defensive coverage. Are they going to be, hedging those ball screens where they're up at the point of the screen, or are they going to be in drop coverage, trying to take away the flip up to caulk? And if they're at the point of the screen and then tagging, with a help side defender, that means that, my skip pass is going to be there, and that's where the threes are going to come from. And so there's just a few different options when it comes to trying to attack that, just making sure that we're shot ready when they come, and then finding the right ones, as well as also trying to establish caulk in the post can also open up the 3-point line if that's needed.
But I want you to kind of expand on that a little bit because again, we've talked about this. Your skill set is immense, right? You're not just a 3-point shooter, but your 3-point shot is arguably your best weapon besides your free throw. So with knowing that, okay, Mike, my guess, I'm just throwing this out there. My guess is that they're going to hard hedge to try to take away both the flip up and your off the dribble shot and basically force some of these other guys to beat us rather than let you and Caulk beat them. So in that mindset of like, okay, there might be one more 3-point shots available, but maybe sometimes that's not always the best shot, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Is like, how, as a shooter though, how do you tell the difference? Like, is this a game you go into like where you want to shoot the open ones, but you don't want to force those? I guess I just want you to talk about kind of that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, for some of it, it's like in some instances, as a scorer, as a shooter, like you've got to be ready to take the right ones, and sometimes it's not the right one, and sometimes a shot that maybe not be the best shot is the right one because you're not going to get a better shot within that possession. And so, sometimes it just comes down to understanding kind of time and score and rhythm of the game, as well as where we're at. And I think that's like a lot of our transition threes come within like, okay, what's the rhythm of the game? Like I had one last night that was just barely front rim and out, but I dribbled it up. We were on kind of like a 5-0 mini run, and I could have pushed it to an 8-0 run, and then the crowd's going crazy, all those types of things. Like you just got to kind of understand that the game within the game, and then try to just make aggressive decisions. And especially when it comes to ball screens and how efficient Caulk and myself and Jemai have been in ball screens, there's going to be a lot of different coverages coming, and so you can't react to those. You got to more so anticipate what the team's going to do, so you can still be on the attack mode, whether that's hunting down threes or getting to the rim or the midi, and the flip ups.
You're clearly not at the office today. You're usually outside of the practice facility. We're not close to Tommy making his first appearance on this podcast right now, right? Where we are, right?
No, yeah.
I just wanted to double check. Hey, you brought up Mac and coaching, and I think it's fair to say that this season Mac has been a little bit more animated on the sideline. Can you talk a bit how much different the coaching seems to be this season from a year ago? Obviously, when you have guys like Baylor and Trey replacing that productivity, and then obviously the Pop Isaacs injury, does it feel like the coaching standpoint of the way that this coaching staff is trying to communicate is any different from a year ago?
I mean, I think in some instances, it's not like there was more or less passion from this year to last year,
Sure.
or more or less will to win, but maybe just more so that you had guys that were within the program. And, when you're within a program for 2 or 3 years, you really understand when a mistake happens, you understand what the mistake was, as opposed to in some instances, I think the coaching staff are still trying to teach, us new guys, why that was a mistake, as opposed to, when, Baylor, Trey maybe made a defensive error last year, it was very much so Baylor could look to the bench and, he was like, my bad, as
Sure.
opposed to sometimes guys might not even know if that was their fault or, somebody else's fault. And so I think that's where some of the animation comes in. And then also just the emphasis of how every shot is so important and we need shots. And so, with the turnovers and just making sure that we get good shots, is another thing that I think we're really trying to key in on. And so, there's some excitement when bad passes happen, and I'm on the tail end of those sometimes, but that's all right.
Steve, we talked a lot about how last night you opened up a few things. You were in the mid range a little bit more. You had some nice spin cycle moves down inside the paint. We've seen Jemiah kind of leverage the mid range a little bit, sometimes super successfully, sometimes not as much. But it's something that this team has probably missed a little bit from Trey last year. Was last night kind of a focal point for you guys to utilize the mid range more as they were denying on the perimeter?
With their defensive, game plan, there was a lot of elements to where they weren't going to let you get all the way to the rim, and they were going to try to take away 3-pointers. And so we had a lot of plans into whether it was back cuts, or different actions that kind of got us into the paint because they sat on that top side and denied a lot of those, wing entry passes or other actions. And so it was definitely a focal point. And I think that Butler was a similar focal point as well with them in drop coverage, which is the big is all the way at the rim waiting for the pick and roll to happen, trying to guard two as opposed to being up at the point of the screen and getting the ball out of the ball handler's hands. And so I think with the Butler game plan as well as this game plan kind of going back to back, guys were a little bit more comfortable, myself included, at taking those mid-range jumpers when they appeared and was able to knock them down at a high enough clip to be successful last night.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to see a ton of that on Saturday. would be my guess. No, listen, after the way we played against them here last year, I can 100% guarantee you that game is on loop at their arena right now. There was 14-3, I believe, and 3-pointers made, us versus them. So the game plan, I'm looking forward to seeing their game plan, against us on Saturday. But I want you to talk about this, Steve. It's kind of I don't know, one of those topics. Do you ask? Do you not ask? There's a lot on the line every game for this team, and you're a veteran. You've been through it. It probably doesn't faze you much at all. But there's some young guys on this team and some guys like Jackson in the starting lineup who, hasn't really been through this. And we're kind of in a different position where last year we're, playing to get in, make the NCAA tournament, see how far we can go. And right now it's like, let's get in the tournament. So, what's the difference, I guess? And I know you're going to say there is no difference, but from a young guy's perspective.
What a stupid question then, right?
No. Listen. I don't ask stupid.
So
There's no
Casey
such
just
thing as a
gave you all
stupid
the
question. Is what I was
answer,
told.
but I'll say something.
My mom taught me there's no such thing as a stupid question, just stupid people that ask questions. But
the shoe fits.
I want to know, like this. How do you help, I guess, keep the guys focused on that night, that game, or do you?
Yeah, that's honestly, I think it's a good question. From my experience as well.
Thank you, Steven.
I at Utah State, this somewhat pressure on every single game, and even pressure even more so on the games that would say maybe even lower in conference or middle of the pack conference teams, compared to the top three conference games. The top three conference games, you don't feel that pressure because win or lose, things are going to be, just about the same. And at Utah State, it was that way. When you would play San Diego State, there was a freedom to where if we go out and win, this is a really resume building win. And if we lose, at the end of the day, our net ranking or whatever isn't going to drop a whole lot. But you go on the road and you lose one at Air Force, next thing you know, you might be out of the tournament type of thing. And so there is a pressure to it to where you're not playing to, hey, can we be the difference between a 6 seed and a 2 seed. That's not quite where we're at competing. I hope that we can keep stringing together some wins to where that is back in the reality, because if you think about where our schedule's at, there is a lot of noise about what this Creighton team is and who we are, and and what level are we at. And to be quite honest with you, I think that the schedule we played this year is much harder than last year. And we came out and our our record isn't that different. We
Yeah.
have 2 losses in conference. The same time last year, we had 2 losses in conference.
Well, and some of the
And
lesser losses this season are starting to look a lot better as well.
yeah, I mean, we haven't really had a bad loss. Obviously, you don't want to lose, to the rival at home, and San Diego State, top of the Mountain West, Texas A&M, top, and then all the injuries that we've had as well to kind of counteract those. Uh, so I think that there is just an element to. There were some people that thought the whole building's on fire. And quite honestly, I think that we're further along than a lot of people thought. And in some instances, that's just the media bias. In
Sure.
all honesty, and I think that as we keep winning games, that's going to be the ultimate deciding factor on where our fate sits on Selection Sunday. But at the same time, still staying focused that it's one game at a time, and it's um, all about that next game. And I was thinking about it last night before bed, knowing that we've got UConn on Saturday, and I legitimately couldn't even think of who we play next. And so I think for some of those other young guys, that's kind of the mentality that you have to stay focused with, because once you start thinking and daydreaming about the next game and the next game, and oh, if we can string together 5 or 6, it's like, well, next thing you know, you're trying to string together 5 or 6 and you lost the last 2 because you're not focused on those ones. And so just every single day trying to focus on what we've got next, and UConn is that coming up on Saturday, and all energy and effort focused towards that. And I think that as a team does that, you start to see the growth, especially from the younger guys, recognizing of how much effort and energy it takes to win each game um, within the conference schedule.
This is the Roll Jays podcast, brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. Don't forget you can donate to Creighton's NIL Collective, the Bird Club, by scanning the QR code in your top right corner. All proceeds will go to benefit your favorite student athletes at Creighton University, as well as benefit this podcast. Steven, you mentioned it. Obviously, there's a pretty big one on Saturday. What are you looking forward to the most about this visit to Storrs, Connecticut, and playing UConn?
I'm definitely excited for just the second go around, understanding the history and the city and the town. The student section is obviously going to be back from Christmas break, and so it's going to be a rowdy environment and a really good road test for a group of veterans and a group of young guys. And so, looking forward to just all of the atmosphere and the energy that's going to be there the second time around.
Steven, you come off a tough shooting night at Butler, and then last night you're phenomenal. And I think that is something that a young guy like Jackson is going to go through, right? But can you just talk about keeping that mindset the same and not losing the confidence in yourself? Obviously, you get the help from the teammates and the coaches, but it is totally different when it's yourself and trying to maintain that level.
Yeah, it is different, and especially as as the season goes on, you're gonna have games, you're gonna have moments where it's just a little bit different, and the shots may be the exact shot that you want to be taking, but it just doesn't quite fall. And so for last night, a big thing that I was thinking about going into that game, with shoot around and everything else that you do on a game day, and just some of my own individual prep, I had literally already made 200 threes that day. And so going into that game, I knew, hey, I might have 5 or 10 more 3-point attempts. I've already made 200 of them. Why don't I go make 10 more today? And it's a little different because you're in a game, but at the same time, just trying to keep that mindset of just all of the reps and effort and work ethic that I've put in towards this game, just giving yourself that confidence that, hey, although there's 16,000 people here watching, maybe a couple 100,000 on the TV as well, like you tune that out because of all of the reps that you've done, and just keeping that mindset, the work removes doubt type of mindset. And I think that went a long way for myself last night, and just something that I'll try to pass on to all those other guys as well.
It's pretty close to the number we have watching this podcast right now.
Exactly right.
I'm a little bit angry with Alex. I mean, you almost had a triple double in the first half, and the thing he wants to talk about is for shooting. It's unbelievable. I apologize for him, Steven.
Yeah.
It's the
And
media bias, right?
we have
Right, Casey? The media
avoided
bias.
talking about the almost triple double because we've already jinxed it once this season.
Yeah, listen, I
It's a
don't
fair
believe
point.
in jinxes. No, I'm going to get off basketball because at least I haven't been on one since the holidays. So Christmas as a dad, I got to hear about it. What was it like? What was, how special was that for you? And then also tell Tommy he could talk as much as he wants. He doesn't need to be quiet. He can be on this podcast.
We can add we'll get him a camera and add a fifth to the podcast. We're fine with it.
All righty. Yeah, we'll
Christmas
put a dash cam
as a
on his-
dad. Tell us
on his
about
car
the
seat.
holidays, and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, Christmas as a dad was awesome. It was special, and it was something that you really can't fully experience and appreciate until it's yours. And so, just I think also being able to provide a Christmas for your child, although he doesn't remember it, although the
Right.
gifts weren't that crazy outside of some toys and some outfits and a little jumper. It was just fun though to be able to open his presents with him and have the whole family excited for his first Christmas and all the pictures and memories and just recognizing what's really important in life and taking a moment away from basketball and the grind that it can be during the season, just appreciate all the blessings that we have and it's certainly a lot of blessings, and so it was good.
Before we let you go, I think we've got to ask the question that has to be on probably the majority of the minds of all of Blue Jay Nation. You're clearly in a vehicle right now. Are you the passenger princess, or are you just doing this because you're doing the podcast today?
No, I'm only passenger princess when I'm doing the podcast. It's the PPP, passenger princess podcast.
There you go. I feel like we
that's
rename this
it.
thing every time you're on.
Yeah, we get a new name for it. We should probably get sponsored by one of the car dealerships for this podcast, but
There you go.
that's neither here nor there.
That is true. I agree with that. Hey, that's Creighton's point guard, Steven Ashworth. This has been the Roll Jays podcast brought to you by Pixel Fire Marketing and Pyramid Contractors. We'll be back following, hopefully, a win over UConn out in stores. We'll get Steven's thoughts on that and weigh on the game as well. Thank you to everybody that joined us. We'll catch up with you next week. See you later. Go Jays.
Go Jays. Thanks, guys.